Hello everyone, welcome to the next session of SAP Security. In this session we are going to discuss about how to analyze and security issues and what are all the tools available inside SAP to analyze and security issue, or what are all the helps we can get inside SAP to get to analyze each security issues. The first and very important tool is SU53 output. Using SU53 output, you can find out what is the user is trying to access and what is the user's issues, or what is the authorization the user is missing. This we can find it out. So before getting into authorization of an SU53, we need to understand what all the information it contains. The first information, the first column here, it describes the user and the system. Here you can see the username and the second you can see which system they logged in, which system and the client, and this is the date, what date this particular SU53 is produced, or what time. So these are all quite important information: which user, what time, which system, which client, and what is the authorization object we are talking about. Instant and profile parameters, okay, we are not so important to us at the moment. So this information is quite useful because first of all we know which user. The many times when the issue has been escalated, that you don't know what is the user ID of the particular user, so you don't need to go back and ask the user what is your user ID. We have this information here, and some of the cases it happens like this, that you are dealing with a customer which has, or in your landscape you have lot of systems in place or lot of clients in place, and one user got an issue and they send you an SU53, and you don't need to go back and ask them which system and which client you have the issue. So you have it in SU53, the information what is required, and which system and which client, what is the user ID. The second part of the SU53 is called authorization check failed. Okay, in the second part you have the detail of authorization object which the user does not have. Why this user have an authorization problem? Yeah, so this is the authorization object. The activity is 01, but the class user group is dummy. So user is trying to do something which requires this specific authorization object. We don't know what they are trying to execute. Maybe what is the transaction, it's not here. Okay, maybe the transaction is passed. The level of, when we see our authorization check, the first level is authorization object s underscore t code with the TCD, so that is passed already. So that is the reason you don't have it. That's an authorization object, s underscore t code with SU01 or whatever the transaction code which this user is trying to run. That is finished. Then come to the next level, is the user is trying to do something else which requires this specific authorization object. So this user don't have this object. Okay, does not mean they don't have this object. Okay, that is the important thing in SU53. You need to come down and see what the user have authorization object. This is what most people make a mistake. They make a judgment based on what is here. So this is authorization object missing, and this too is authorization object, and this is a variable which is missing, and then it ends. Now you need to come down and see what the user have already. Let's, in this case, the s underscore user group, the user have activity 01 03, and the user is trying to do 01, and the user wants 01. The field class means user group, the user group available for this user is demo. So this particular user have authorization to view the users in user group demo. But what this user is doing is he is trying to create a user group called dummy. So that seems to be something strange. Why it is dummy? The dummy have different meaning that we will come to that the later sessions. What we need to do is that we need to compare these two, what this user have, not only just check this one. SU53 is the key output for an authorization issue. Let's get into some more example in the system so that we can understand this SU53 very clear. This is very important that we understand this SU53, because without understanding the whole SU53 or without understanding the concept behind the SU53, it's very difficult to diagnose any authorization issue. So let's log into our system. So for this exercise, what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in with the user which we have already, the student 1, security student 1. Using this user, I'm trying to create a user. For example, this is our first scenario. Yes, U01. It says you are not authorized to use this transaction 01. Okay, that's an authorization error. Then what I will do is I will try, what the user is going to do, or what you will ask the user to do, in the same error, within the same error, you will try to run /NSU53 or SU53. See, this should be in the same position when you got the error. Means that you have this specific error in the user buffer. So let's say I'll run SU53 now. So now I got the output of my SU53. My user is security underscore student 1, and the authorization object which is missing is s underscore t code, and this is a system and this is a client. This time we executed. If you see here s underscore tcd, that is t code, su01 which is missing. If I open this, then this will give me what are all the transaction code which already available with this user, what profile and role. Yeah. So this is our first example. If you run a transaction code, you does not have a transaction authorization for transaction code, then it will get an error message like this. Then you can know, okay, this user is trying to execute SU01 which he don't have, which he or she don't have. Now you will make a decision whether this person supposed to have it or not. Maybe not. Then we will tell them, okay, sorry, you are not supposed to have this authorization. In some cases, okay, if we need to have this authorization, we will give the authorization. Okay. So running SU53 in the specific time is very important. Okay, let's see another scenario. The second scenario, I will log in using the same user. In our assumptions that we have this user which has authorization to create and change sales order. So let's go to create sales order. we will create sales order for some specific sales org. The sales order type is, let's take a promotion order AA, sales organization 3020, and division 40, and distribution channel 20. In the sales office, let's select a sales office 3010, and sales group. Now I'll say create order. It says no authorization to maintain sales document in 30201400. Something is wrong. So as soon as I got the error, then what I will do, /NSU53. Now we got an error. So this user have authorization for VA01 to create the sales order. I think we need to show you that. Here it's not showing, so let's go here, go to setting and display technical name. Again VA01, we go by this VA01. So this specific user have authorization for VA01 but still have some error. So they send you this SU53. So what you can do is, how do we send this SU53? Go to your system list and you can go to local file and save. Okay, here I don't have this option, so I go to text view. So this is a text view, the easier way to save, which will have all the entire view. Okay, then I go to system list, save, local file. Then you can send it as spreadsheet or rich text format or HTML format. I will say unconverted. I'll go to my desktop, then I will say SU53 EA01. Generate. So now you got a text file from a user called security student 1 saying that I cannot create sales order. So as soon as you got the text file, okay, you know this is the user and this is a system, and this time they executed this one. The authorization check failed for this object sales document sales area activity 01. They are trying to create something, and this is the authorization object which is failed. But if you see, the same authorization object is already available with this user. Now we need to understand what is missing. Next one, once you identify, okay, the same authorization object is available, then we need to check, okay, they are trying to create activity 01. That means the next thing what you will do is that you will check the field activity 01. That means this user is trying to create a sales document. Then you come back and see what they have already. They have the same authorization object activity 01. They have 01, 02, 03, 06, 24 and 25. But they already have 01. They can create sales orders. Next, what divisions? 01. They have star. That means they can create for all divisions. Next one, what they have? Sales organization. So 3020. And now you will come to the sales organization here. They have 1000, 1000 and 2000. That means the sales organization 3020 is missing. They have 1020, 1000 and 2000. Then distribution channel is 14, but they have star. So they don't have problem with the authorization object. They already have the object. They have the activity 01. They have the division is star. Only missing is the sales organization. That's the reason, as I said in the beginning, that we need to get all the, you need to compare the failed object with the object which you have. In some cases you may have more than one objects coming from different roles. Then we need to compare like this with each objects which already exist. From this specific example, what we can find out that this user have authorization to create sales order for this company, this sales organization and this sales organization, but they do not have authorization to create for one specific sales organization which we selected, that is 3020. So that is the error. Now this come to our security consultant, we need to analyze. So let's go to this user. Right now I will log in as a different user. I will log in as trainer. Let's assume this is your consulting user ID. You got the SU53. Let's go to this user. And one more thing, this also has these roles. Yeah, this is also very important information. You already know from which role you are getting this authorization. So let's go to the user /NSU01, put the user and see. Okay, I go to the roles. I have the role here. So this is the role which already exists. If I go back, if I double click on the role, we can directly open the role in a different session. You go here and display. Let me go to the same object. Copy. I will select the find button, then I will paste the authorization object here and say find. Yeah, it is correct. So this user have only one role where they have the authorization for 1000 and 2000. Okay, now we need to take a decision whether this authorization need to be given to this user or you don't need to give this user. Maybe this user is trying to do something wrong. He is not supposed to create a sales order in this organization. Yeah, maybe we need to have an additional role which should have been assigned to this user, which was not the case. So we can make a decision whether you need to grant this authorization or this user is trying to make something which they are not supposed to have. let's assume that I wanted to add this authorization, then you can simply add it in the role, or you may be having a different uh, role based on our authorization concept which needs to be assigned to this user. Okay, let's go to the next step. The next method of finding an authorization issue is by tracing an user using a transaction code called ST01. Using ST01, you can trace all authorization issues. The difference between SU53 and ST01 is SU53 is like, so you run a transaction code, you found an authorization issue, you can ask the user, okay, run SU53 and send me the output. It's a check after the error has happened. But the ST01 is a tracing a user. Whether you have the authorization, you don't have authorization, using ST01 you can trace the entire transaction of a specific user. What steps each transaction code, what the authorization have, what they don't have, everything. So generally, if this will give you some outputs, we can see, which is called return code. RC means return code 0, that means this authorization is successful. Return code 4 means this authorization is unsuccessful, they don't have this authorization, but the user have this object in the buffer, but maybe it's with a different value. And return code 12 means it's also unsuccessful, user does not have this authorization object in buffer. So that means 0 means authorization is fine, 4 means this is like authorization object is available, but it's a different value, same like what we had in our SU53. This RC12 means this authorization object is not there at all. In the older versions, the 4.7 and below, that you will find RZ0 and RZ1. Return code 0 means pass and 1 means fail. In ECC you will have it 0, 4 and 12. So let's not confuse this. In the older version you have 0 and 1, which is main, but still had different return codes, but 0 and 1 is the main ones. And in the latest version you have 0, 4 and 12. You have a lot of other return codes, but you will not find these return codes in an authorization trace. So these are all the main return codes you will find in authorization trace. Let's see in our system how to trace a user. We will take the same scenario as before, the student 01 trying to create a sales order, specific sales org, so that we can see whether our SU53 is matching with this trace. I would like to inform you, this trace is a last option for your authorization check. So don't come to a conclusion, okay, let's trace this user, because you already have all this information what you want. You know all the authorization objects which is assigned to the user from SU56. You will get all the authorization object. You will get the authorization object which is not available, what this user is trying to do, from SU53. If these fails, that means you are not able to get the right authorization object in some scenario, or you wanted to find out what happened, or what is the authorization checks which has happened before, or these kind of complex scenarios, only you should try to use the trace. The reason behind that is the trace files which is generated from SAP is a raw file. Yeah, it's a raw file saved in the SAP operating system. I can show you that. Let's go to our trainer user. This is our trainer user who have authorization to trace. So I go to ST01. If you go to this administrator tab, you can see there is a trace file which is been created. So this is a raw file. As I said, there is a text file which is being generated in the operating system. This text file is going to be very big when you trace. So be careful when you are starting a trace. Make sure you switch off the trace once you finished, and do not trace all the time, because it's going to create a file in your backend system which is again a bigger, and it's going to consume quite a lot of space in the system. And if you don't switch off the trace, it's going to keep generating this trace. And we can also filter the trace only to the specific user. Okay, now in our scenario, this user send you an SU53. You assume that you did not get it right. Okay, so you want to trace this user security student 01. Okay, so to trace this user, you need to trace the user in the same server where they logged in. Okay, right now we have only one application server. As we seen that you can have multiple application server. So how do I know which server I logged in? You can see it here. SAP SRV is my server name. If you have more than one application server, we need to switch on the trace in that specific application server where the user is logged in. So as we seen, this SM51 is the transaction code will give you all the SAP servers. So by clicking a different, just double click on the second SAP server or the different SAP server, then you will see this name changed. Unfortunately, in the demo system we have one SAP server, but you can double click on the other one, then the server name will change, then you are active in the second server. So this is from our side. Now we need to find out the particular user student 01 is logged into which server. Either we can ask the user which server you logged in, then they can say okay, I logged into this server. Then you can switch, you can go to SM51 and switch to that specific server. Otherwise what we can do is we can go to a transaction code called AL08. Then you go to this AL08, then you will find all the user logged into this specific system, SAP system. So this gives you list of all user logged on to that on that specific time. Okay, this is a very important transaction code. The transaction code is AL08. Okay, so when you go to the transaction code called AL08, then you will find the user. So let's say our student user is logged into the server called SAP SRV underscore PRD underscore 00. Okay, so you go to AL08 and find out which the user is logged into which server. Then you go to /n SM51, then go to that specific server, double click on the specific server, then you will switch to that specific server. Then you can go to your ST01. First you'll find out which server the user is logged in. You can ask the user, otherwise you can go AL08 and check it. Then you switch to that user using SM51, double click on the server, then you will switch to that server, then you will start your tracing. In AL08 also, if you are doing it for a quite large system, then this list is going to be a big list. Let's say I don't know, some 1000 concurrent users, then it's going to be a really huge. So in that case you can go to AL08, then click this find button, search button, put the user ID, then search. Okay, then you get all the server wherever the SAP system can find this user ID, then click here, then it will come to that specific screen, then you will find out okay which is the server. So you can always use this search option. So let's assume now I went to AL08 and find out what is my server. I switch to the user server in SM51. Now user also in the same server, I am also in the same server. I'm going to start the ST01 trace. ST01. The next step what you will do is you need to select this authorization check and you will click the trace on. So when you click the trace on, it's going to start the trace for all users which is logged into this server. So again, this is also very important. When you switch on the trace, it's going to trace for all users. Let's assume that your system is so big, you will have maybe 40 users or 50 users in the same system and trying to do lot of transactions, and maybe some background users, background jobs which is running in your system. These are all running lot of different transactions. It's quite load is going to be quite high. So if you switch on like this, it's going to trace all the users which you don't need actually. So you want to trace only the user which is called student 01. So we can filter only to this user. So how do we filter that? Go to the menu, then go to edit, go to filter and shared. When you come here, then you have trace for user only, then you put the user ID here and say okay. Now what it will do, when as soon as you switch on the trace, it will trace only that user. So you are not going to pile up a huge amount of trace file in your operating system. Yeah, this is going to create a trace file. On top of it, it's going to create a disk load, because as you see in the previous sessions, the SAP transactions are saved in the database using different methods. So it will not directly go and save into a database. It will have commit method. First it will put in the memory, then once you collect everything, then you're going to write in the database. But in here, when you start, it's directly you are going to write into the disk. So the disk usage also going to be very high. The server utilization goes quite high. So we have to be careful when we switch on. Make sure it switch off, make sure you filter it, then it should not be a big problem. Okay, and ST01 is used not only for authorization trace, you can use it for SQL trace, for DB access, which is again a direct SQL trace which will going to have a huge impact, and table buffer tracing and RFC calls we can trace, and HTTP calls. So these are all the trace which will be used by BC side, mainly by a website or basis side. And for authorization, select only this, please don't select anything else. Then you say trace on. Now we switch on the trace for the student 1. Now tell the user, you please execute the transaction which you have an issue. So now I will go assume that I am the user. Now I am the user logged into the system using the user ID security student 01. I will go to create sales order. This is my order type and sales organization, sales office, everything is fine. I'll say enter. I got authorization issue. So I tell the consultant or security admin saying that yeah, I got the authorization issue again. Then I'm the security consultant. Okay, fine, the user tried to execute something, fine, they have an authorization issue, let me off the trace. So we already traced. Now we need to analyze this trace. To analyze the trace, you go to Analyze. When you click Analyze, then you can read the trace for the specific user or for specific times. You have a lot of filters, and filter as much as possible, because again it's going to bring you a quite lot of information if you are tracing for a big business scenario. In our scenario is very small. Then I specify the username. Then you can specify what period you wanted to analyze, and you can select the options. In our case only authorization check is available, just leave it. And here also you filter it as much as possible. Yeah, you filter as much as possible, because in some cases that you will be tracing a quite lot of business scenarios, then the information what you have is going to be quite huge. I can specify the date. So today's date is 24. So say 24, only 24. Then this will be my starting time and ending time. Then execute. And so I got some output. It says this is the user and some transaction ID, and here is the trace output. Okay, so if you read this one, if you see RZ0, that means return code 0 for object s underscore t code, which was VA01, and we have return code 4 for some another transaction. This also checked authorization for some another transaction code. So that means whenever you call VA01, this is checking, do you have authorization for another transaction code. That means possibly we can switch from VA01 to these transaction codes. So that's the reason SAP is checking for these transaction codes. So again, this scenario, this does not mean that you need to have all these authorization objects. That means all these transaction codes to execute BA01. Meaning RZ4 means that we do not have this authorization. S underscore T code, this object is already available, but this transaction code is not available. Then we have another object which is also 04, which is almost related, same like our SU53. Okay, this is what which is not available with this user. Again, here S underscore T code, which is also not available, does not mean these authorization object is required to run VA01. You don't need to have authorization for all this transaction code. This is an check which is done by SAP. So this does not stop VA01. Okay, it will check, then it will continue. So it continues here and it stops here. It stopped in this authorization check. After that it did not go further. Okay, and let's check with the same like our SU53 which we got. So this was our SU53. Put it a little bit down. Okay, this was our SU53. This is the same object v underscore vback underscore vko, which has activity 01, then division SPART, which is 00, and VKORG sales organization is 3020, and VTWEG, that is distribution channel, which is 14. So we got the same authorization object which is not available in our authorization trace also. That means we go to authorization trace only if you don't get this authorization object in SU53, or it's found it so complicated to find this in SU53. And there is another reasons to do tracing in case of, let's say this user is a communication user which is used for only RFC calls, then we cannot get SU53. We will come to that in later sessions in detail. How do we do this for communication users or maybe background users? Then also we will use tracing. For dialog also user also we can use tracing if the SU53 is not or does not give us the proper information. So quite important that please come to a judgment saying that if all the authorization object which says RC4 should be assigned to this user. It is not necessary. This is a validation which is done by SAP whether this is already available. It's just a check. Okay, if it is not available, it's fine. This will not give the option to switch to these transaction codes. Okay, this is called tracing. We can also use the tracing to find out the authorization object which is required. Some cases, okay, let's say I cannot come to a judgment of some transaction code what all the authorization object I require or what all the value I require. Then we can use this to develop our authorization or develop the role, which is quite important. Let's say I went to my SU24 but it does not show me anything, and I went to the table of this SAP standard table to check this standard authorization checks, but still does not show me anything. So how do I come to a conclusion? The best way, just trace it. Trace will give you a very good detail about what is required. Let's do a small exercise on this. Let's say I wanted to find out the authorization object for required for SU53. Okay, then what I will do, I will go to SU24, SU24, then to application transaction SU53, then execute. Then I will filter only this one which says yes, which says yes underscore develop, yes underscore user, and this is all for user administration authorization which we seen. So I'm not sure whether it is really required or not. So let me find out. Let me also check what is the field values. It says authorization group activity 03. Let's say yes underscore develop. What is the field value for this one? This also says quite number of authorization objects. So I am little confused now whether I do I need all this authorization object. So if you wanted to come to a conclusion, so let's do this exercise. What are all the objects which I definitely required to run SU53? So what I will do, I am going to trace my own user. Okay, so my own user, this is my own user. Here this is my own user. I'll copy this, go to ST01, and I will create one more session. Let me go here and create a session. Let me keep it side by side so it's quite easy. Okay, this also let me make it like this. Okay, so I'm going to trace my user. Go to shared. This is my user trainer 1 which I'm going to trace. It's an authorization trace on. Now that my trace is on, I will go here, run SU01, maybe for some reason, come back, never mind. Then I will run SU53. It says everything is successful. Okay. Now let me go to my trace off, and go to Analyse. That's my date. Let me change. You will get that start date and end date of the trace by default, and people misunderstand this one. The trace which happens in the system is based on the system time and date. This date is based on the user date and time. So this date right now, it says 05, which is the time of the, which is based on the user setting CET time, but the system time is 10. Yeah, so we need to adjust this time based on the system time. So instead I will put 00 to 23. So don't miss this, otherwise you don't get the result. So execute. This was the first transaction which I tried to execute. The second transaction is which I execute is SU53. Here still I'm still not satisfied with this output. Here it says only SU53 is required. It does not show anything else. No other authorization object is required for SU53. I'm not sure. So let's try one more time. Let me try to run SU53 in the student user ID. That may be more easier. So let me go and filter it again. Shared student user ID, authorization check, which is on. Okay, I'll leave it on. I'll go to the student user. Okay, this is the student user. Trying to run /NSU53. I got the SU53 now. Go back, trace off, can go to Analyze. Need to change the user to student, this date, and run it. This was our previous ones. Now it says only SU53. So based on what trace what we have, to run an SU53 you don't need any specific authorization. You need only the transaction code SU53. I don't know. Let's check it out whether it is true or not. To check, let's create a role. Okay, so what I will do, I will go to my trainer user. I will create a role called PFCG set BC 999 SU53. SU53 test. So if I add this SU53 in the menu, then it's going to add all this authorization object, which I don't want. I just wanted to test whether it's going to work with SU53 or not. I go to manual, add s_t code. I will say SU53. Generate, say. Okay, this is my use role. Let me copy this. I will assign to one user. 5 role. Let me remove all the roles and assign this specific role. Okay, I also wanted to change the password. So the user student 5 right now have only authorization object s underscore t code is equal to su53. Let's log in with this user. Okay, I logged in with that user. The user is now student 5. Try to run su01, no authorization, su, then let me try to run su53. So I got the output. So I got the output without any authorization object assigned to su53. So you may be a little bit confused now. The su24 gives you a lot of objects, so why do we need all these objects? Do we need to include all these objects? Maybe not, because it is not necessary that you need to include all these objects. Okay, the su24 is an indication of objects which is related to that specific transaction code. That does not mean all the authorization object should be assigned to this user. Okay, go. su24. As we seen that we can change these authorization objects. We can change the value of these authorization objects. That means from here you can, whenever you add this role or whenever you add this transaction code to a specific role, then this authorization object will be added by default, or a hint, or as an reference authorization object. Does not mean you need all this authorization object. So let's come back to our transaction code called su53. From this su53 output, you can display a different, you can see a su53 of a different user. Okay, there is a tab here called user. So right now what you get is security student 5. I wanted to see security student 1. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. You click here. Now it says you are not authorized to display user. If you go n su53 again, you are going to get a su53 of an su53. I say now it's asking for user, this user. The usage of this one is that you do not need to ask the user even to get an su53. For example, this user student 5 have an issue. Okay, I'm the security consultant as a trainer. Okay, I'll go to my trainer user. Okay, I wanted to find out, instead of asking the user student 5, I wanted to find out what is the su53 they have. So I go to su53 of my own screen, then I go to this button, then it will ask me the user ID, then I put 5, student 5, then I get, sorry, security, then I put security student 5, okay, then execute. Then I got the authorization check which is available for student 5 in my user ID. Okay, so you can read the authorization object of a different user. First of all, this is an additional facility or additional option available in SU53. Instead of asking a specific user, you can read the user buffer of a different user if you have that specific authorization. Okay, this is number one, which is functionality. Let's come back to our exercise. SU53 itself we are talking about. To run a specific authorization checks, you don't need additional object, but to run this functionality, switching to a different user, you need this authorization object. So as I said, in SU24 the output what you get, say yes, yeah, does not mean that you need this authorization object all the time. It's again based on your usage. Okay, let's not confuse, maybe a little bit confused SU53 here going back and forth. So in this scenario, let's say when you wanted to have an additional function inside the transaction code SU53, go to a different user, then only you need an additional authorization object called s_user group to read a different user. Otherwise you don't need this. Okay, otherwise you don't need any authorization object without that. So it depends on the functionality within the transaction code what you are going to do, then you need to define the additional authorization object. And the second, one more thing what we seen in SU53 transaction code itself, that an additional functionality which is called, you can switch to a different user to read their user buffer. Let's see the next issue. Yeah, we've seen this dummy value in quite many places. In your ABAP program, how do they check authorization? Using a command called authority check. So if they say authority check with some values which they are supposed to define, which they put a quotation, 2 quotes, just to check whether this object is available or not. They are not checking for a specific value. That's the reason it shows you dummy. That's the reason it shows here, for example, dummy. Okay, the reason it shows here dummy is that, okay, let's go to the user. Let's go to the student user. My logged in user is student. Yeah, so they are checking a blank code, blank value. Yeah, which does not have anything inside. That's the reason it's showing dummy. So why do we need to check dummy? Right now I'm trying to click here. Okay, I'm not selecting any user, so I don't know which the user which I am going to select is coming from which user group, so we cannot check that. So before getting into that specific user, SAP would like to check whether are you allowed to check, even click this specific button. So that is the check logic behind that. So I click here, you're not authorized. So what can I check? I cannot check the transaction code. There is no transaction code behind this. So this is a functionality within this SU25, sorry, within the SU53. So I just check. So SAP will check this object 03 with the dummy value. Do you have it? If you have it, then you will further go inside and give you an option to key in the user. So once you key in the user, then again it goes back and check the same authorization group with this class, that specific class for that specific user. Are you able to read? If you cannot read, then you can't go in. Okay, so that is the logic behind this dummy values. So this is possible. That means if you get a dummy value, that means at that specific moment of checking, that SAP is checking with a blank value does not mean that this value is not required. That is a logic behind, this is a logic behind that. So you may require in the future stage, and the initial stage it's not required. So so far what we have seen two types of issues. First one is like when you start a particular transaction, then you need to have some specific authorization object to start the transaction. Then you get that authorization objects in SU53, and in some cases once you log into some transaction code and you do some activities in the specific step, that you will get an additional authorization check which is only for that specific step. So this is two different way of authorization check is being done in SAP. One is called silent way of doing the checks, one is straight way of doing the checks. Straight way of doing the checks, let's say for SU01, when you wanted to get into SU01, you need S underscore T code with SU01 with an authorization object S underscore user underscore GRP group. So like on SU53, like when you want SU53, you got into SU53. If you wanted to click on that user for a different switch to a different user, then you need to have additional authorization check, that's called silent one. Let's see some more examples, some more issues which you may face in your authorization. Let's say user found some authorization issue in some transaction code, and the user start SU53 to verify what has been done. Then SU53, when you got an SU53 output, that it says that S underscore CTS underscore admin, this authorization object is failed. This is the authorization object it is checking for. This S underscore CTS admin, this is something to do with basis administration. This is nothing to do with end users. So this is basically, it comes because this authorization object is not related to the user. By looking at this authorization object, that you can identify this specific authorization object is not related to the user is doing. So you need to also make some judgments like this. So don't just go and put this authorization object to this user. That is, first of all, that is very risky, and secondly, that's not going to solve the problem. The S underscore, any authorization object, it start with S underscore means is something to do with the system. So this authorization object is not relevant to the user. This you may face it commonly. So this is a side effect of more personalized application design. So the application which is designed was more personalized design. So this is a side effect of that. That does not mean this authorization object needs to be assigned to this user. Some application try to identify this button should be shown and which buttons unless because of is missing authorization. More personalized means some of the application, when you start the specific application or the transaction code, this specific application try to identify some of the buttons. Let's say there's a lot of buttons in the specific transaction code or this application, where during the execution or during the start of this particular application, it tries to identify which are all the buttons which need to be shown to the user based on this authorization assigned. So that time this will also check for these authorization objects, because while during the check, this is a standard authorization object check for the maintenance of this particular button. So if we did not define that properly, the checking logic of the specific buttons, then you will get this as an authorization error. So in these type of cases that you are not able to identify, okay, this is not the actual authorization object which may be looking for, then that cases you can do a tracing. let's not confuse. The personalized application design means while executing that specific transaction, you will have a lot of buttons. If you see in our SU01, you have a lot of buttons: delete, reset password, like these kind of buttons. Yeah, there's be different kinds of buttons in the business scenario. So these buttons, some of the business scenario, these buttons are shown based on some authorization which is assigned to this user. In these kind of scenarios, this will also, that will check for this system based, the system authorization object, to verify that do we have authorization to maintain this specific button. That's the reason we get this authorization object in there. So that does not mean that this authorization object is required to run this transaction. As we seen in our trace on VA01, there are a lot of other transaction codes which has been checked during the VA01. Does not mean that we need to have this authorization object assigned to the user to run this VA01. Same like here. So we need these type of cases. You may need to trace the user, then skip this. In tracing also, you may get this authorization object, skip this authorization object and go to the authorization object specific to the user what he is trying to do. It is always better to understand what is actually this user is trying to do. Meaning, you will not be able to understand each and every business process in SAP, but what in a general practice, it's the best thing to understand what this user is trying to do. You can also go back and ask the user how to simulate this problem. When you simulate it by yourself, then you can have little bit idea about what the business document we are trying to create or trying to modify. Then we can judge based on that what is the object could be related to this. Next one is verifying authorization object. The most important transaction is SUIM, to check an authorization object which is missing. Okay, so let's check in our system. This is our SAP. Go to SUIM. This is user information system. This have quite a lot of menu. SUIM is a collection of different programs. You may be able to access these programs or these selections and these programs from different transaction codes or different reports. However, this SUIM is the collection of all authorization verification. So let's go to one by one. First one is user. If you wanted to find out an output, should be an user. If you want something in the roles, if you wanted to find something in the profile, authorization object, transaction, comparing two different authorization, comparing two different users, roles, profiles and authorizations, where user list, where the specific user roles or profiles are being used, and change document. So this, as I said, you will find this information from different transaction codes and different reports. For example, for users, if you click here, this screen may be familiar to you. This is a same screen which is coming from user information from SU01. So this may be like coming from different transaction code with a different report. This is coming from again PFCG, like this. So they put everything together where to make it easy that we can run in one place. You can find all the information what is required. So let's look into this issue what we got. Let's look into the SU53, for example. What we got, can we get something from there? Let's say I had the problem, I tried to run a SU01, the student 1, but they got an issue. So I wanted to find out what are all the roles which has authorization for SU01. Then I will go to roles, roles by complex selection criteria. Here I can remove this without user assignment. We can look with user assignment also. I wanted to see all the single role and composite role. Here in the transaction code I try SU01. Okay, and execute. Now I got a quite number of list. So these are all the transactions, these are all the roles which is presently available which you can execute SU01. There's so many roles which you can run SU01. Now let's say I go to user, user by complex selection criteria. So I want to find the users which has the transaction code SU01. So these are all the users which has authorization to SU01. So these are all the users, and you can also see some of the users are already logged and some service users. So quite many users who have authorization for SU01. Like this in SUIM you have many different reports you can get. Then this is like user, roles, profiles, authorizations and authorization objects. Then we have transaction executable for user. Yeah, this is transaction. This is quite interesting one. Let's say go to the executable user. Let's say security student 1. Let's say execute. Now you can see these are all the transaction code this specific user can use. So like this you can also see, let's say for executable for roles. Let's say we created so many roles. Let's take one example. Let's take one of the roles which we created on composite role. Let's say execute. Now you can see this role have this many transaction code. These are all the executable transaction code for this specific role. So this very useful report to find out what role which we can run. So this is based on transaction code. Then comparison. This is very useful report in this SUIM, that if you wanted to compare two different users, two different roles, two different profiles and authorization. Why we need to do this comparison? In some time, let's say one user will come and tell you, okay, I have a problem. So okay, but one of my colleague, but they can use this properly. So you go back and check the roles and everything is fine, then it's quite very difficult to identify what may be the reason. We don't know. Then you can use this comparing two different users. When you click here, then you get two users. then you can put, let's say, security student 1, security student 2. So put two different users, then you execute, then you get the comparison. Okay, student 1 have this one, green means student 1 have this specific authorization object, but student 2 does not have it. Let's say p login, this both the user have it, but still yellow. This is different value. And maybe we can see it differently. Let's do it like this. Let's create show is 01 student 1. I will create a copy of this user with student X, address everything same. So we have same role like student 1. In our scenario, we copied the student X from student 1, so we should not have any difference between these two users. So when I execute, see, everything is green. So let's make some small differences, then we will understand this a little better. I'll go to student X, change. I'm going to add a role which, let's add this one, SU25, but this still will not have any difference. It should not have any difference because the SU25 also should be available with the other user. Let's check it. There is s underscore t code. It says s underscore t code yellow, a different value. I don't know what is this. Let's check that. What is it? Then you can see okay, the student 1 does not have an value SU53 which is coming from this profile. Okay, but it's a warning. It does not mean this does not have it at all. This have somewhere, not here. Not here also. SU56. Here is SU53. It's already there. So the student 1 do have SU53. It's green. In this with this authorization object, this authorization profile, both the users already have. The only difference here is that with this authorization profile, this user student X which have it, but student 1 which does not have it. That is the reason it says here yellow. Yellow means different value, but still somewhere it's having it. Okay, if it is not there at all, then it's a different case. Let me go to the student X, to the role which we assigned, let's say the PFCG. Even though we created this specific role for a different reason, let me add some authorization object, yes underscore develop. Okay, as we said, this is something critical object. Let me put something, yeah. Okay, now let's compare these two users. Go back and compare these two users. Now we have still this yellow. Yes, develop, still here yellow. Okay, that means again different values. So initially it had yes develop 03, but it had to for the users, but in a different, which has all the values star star star, which is only available for student X. So in our example still we did not get red. Let's move it, make it little more interesting. I will add some more. Authorization manual this underscore added one more authorization object. Okay, that's enough. Now run this comparison again. This also same. This also have same like different values. Let's add some more changes to student X. I'll go to change. Now going to add some more authorization objects. So I added some more authorization object to make a quite big difference. Let's see. But still these values are still there. So what we can do is, let's say we remove some roles from this user. Okay, go to let's remove these two roles. Yep. Now let's try to run it. Now if you see, we have quite big differences. Different object. This object red means that this object is not available with one user at all. So there is an object like this which is not available for student X. So you know what is green, yellow and red. So here you can see quite a lot of authorization which is not available. For example, yes underscore at, this is the authorization object which you got it from, you believe this is one which is not available. We want to know, okay, now which are all the, which is the role which has this authorization object. For example, you want to know this. So let's go to, so let's open a new session. So I wanted to know this authorization object is available with which role. Go to SUIM, then I go to roles, role by complex selection criteria. So I want to know the roles. I want to know the single role and composite role without user assignment. This is not a transaction code. Then I go down. This is an authorization object which I wanted to find. So you put the object here, then press enter. So as soon as you press enter, then the then it will give you the option to select the related field for the specific object. Yeah, yes underscore data set. Then the activity which we wanted to look is activity from, and activity 2 is not there. Activity from is 06, and the file name from, file name, where is it? Here, file name, we need to put this one. Actually this is again a variable, just for checking we just put that. And the program, this is the program for, right, program. So we copy this. To copy you say Control Y, then Control C, we copied. Okay, so we have, I want to know yes underscore data set with this field, with this activity, and the file name should be like this. With these inputs, what is the role which is available? Anyway, we can go to this user. At this moment the user have only 1 or 2 roles. We go to the user, and by comparing these roles you will be able to get it. But if you have more than 100 roles, then again it's going to be a bigger problem. You can also select multiple authorization objects and say simply execute. So when you execute, then it will give you all the roles which is available. Then you can select, you can compare with the user and select the role which is appropriate for this specific user. This is comparison, and you can also compare the user across the system. Okay, if you go back to the previous screen, the user, sorry, this is the default screen. So if you wanted to see across the system, you click across, then you have 2 more selection tab where you can select the RFC destination for each system. So you need to select the RFC destination for user A, then you select the RFC destination for user B, then you can compare. Then this one is for comparing the roles. When you click here, you can compare the roles. If you wanted to compare 2 different roles, internal roles, you can compare it like this. Across the system, you click across, then you have the RFC destination, you can compare across the roles. Let's compare some roles. Let's try to compare some role, this one and one. Okay, now we got an output which says nothing is matching. The reason is that we selected is composite role, which has a different single role, both of them. So this single role which is not available with this composite role, this single role anyway is not available with the other this composite role. So it's not matching. Okay, 2 different composite role. Let's take a single role, then we can find out object wise. Let's compare 2 different single roles. Everything is same. So whatever the authorization object what we have, both are same, only the awk values are different, which we already know. Okay, this is the comparison. This is a very useful thing, because if let's say most of the time what happens is that you do a lot of changes in the development system and productive development system, and it maybe this transport, these changes are not gone to production. So if you wanted to compare the roles from development to production, then you can use this option to compare the roles in production or to different system. The change documents, which we have seen in different topics: user change document, role assignment, roles, profiles, and authorizations, which we can see it. So this SUIM is a very important transaction code to fix the issue in authorization. Now let's look at some of the tables which is associated with our users as well as authorization. The first table which we are going to see is AGR underscore 1251. This is a very important table which saves all the information related to a role. Let's go to this table. Let's look into the system, then we can understand this better. Go to the transaction code SC16, the table browser. Then go to the table AGR underscore 1251. The tables generally start with AGR underscore is related to profiles or roles. So this AGR 1251 saves all the role related information, that means all the single roles and the objects. So let's take one of the role which we have created, then key in the role name, the technical role name, then execute. Now it gives you all the objects and related fields as well as values in this table. Okay, so if I wanted to see, for example, one authorization object, let's say this is the authorization object which I am interested to see, which is available in how many roles. Let's say which is my role starting with Z underscore PM underscore derive role derive underscore D ending with star, and this is the authorization object which I am looking for. I want to know what are all the roles in this series have this specific authorization object. Put it like this, let's say run it, then I got couple of roles. So in this way we can search the roles quite easily. Otherwise, if you want to do some kind of analysis, then the table browser will be a quite useful option. And let's see, this is my initial role. This, if you see, this role has its own organizational values, but here it still says it's a variable. The reason is the organization level values are not saved in this table. This is saved in a different table separately. So if you go to AGR 1252, then put the roles here, then execute, then you can see what is the awk values for the roles. So all the awk values are saved in 1252. Okay, then let's see the next table which we are going to see is the table called AGR underscore AGRS. Okay, this table saves all the composite roles and the single roles related to the composite role. So if you see, there's two options only, is role, composite roles and single roles. And let's say I have a single role. This was the single role which we are actually looking, and I want to know what all the composite role has this specific single role. Okay. Then I say put the single role here, then I execute. So I have two roles which has this specific single role. So if we need to find out what all the composite role has a specific single role, then we can find it out from this table. So this For example, this specific service manager role, how many single roles are there? You can anyway go and see it in PFCG, but if you wanted to see it faster, the table level, this will be quite easy. Put the composite role here, then these are all the single roles available in this composite role. You can also get this information from your SUIM. Then you may think, why do I need to look into these tables? But if you are used to tables, and if you wanted to make it faster, if you wanted to compare a huge number of roles, then this will be the better way. Let's assume you are doing a due diligence for a system or a bigger system. You wanted to have all the information related to the composite role, what is available in each single role. Perhaps this is the best way, because this you can simply download and go to save, and you can download the local drive as a spreadsheet, and you can do analysis based on this inputs. And if whenever we create a composite role, and this will be the table which will be automatically updated. Okay, then let's go back to our destination. We seen AGR 1251, we also seen AGR 1252, seen AGRs, and we come to USR 02. This is a very important table. Anything start with USR, it's all related to user. Let's go to USR 02. This USR 02 is a table which saves all the user information. All the user information means most of the information, user information. This have quite a large number of informations, which is very useful almost in your day-to-day fixing or identifying user or creating some reports. So let's take one user like this. So this table has client for 800. This is the user ID, and it has the initial password. This initial password does not mean this is the actual password. This is again coded. This is again decoded password. That encryption methodology is quite complex. It used to be easier before. Now because of so many security things, this made it very complex. People still broken this encryption, password encryption. That is also one of the reason, if you see in a bigger systems, the SU02 USR02 display authorization for this table is totally removed from all users. Nobody can view this one. Okay, and this has the validity of the user from to, and then the user type, which we already seen. You can see the user type A, B, C, and L and S. If you've seen that we said A means dialog user, B means system user, C means communication user, and L means reference, and S means service user. But here is the technical comparison for this one, because in SU01 what you will get is only you will get the short text, you don't get the user type. And so here you get the user type, then user group is a template, incorrect logons, then that means how many times this user had incorrect logon. This is the counter. So based on this counter only, the system will compare with the system parameters and log this user at the moment the user is. Then next one is user lock, that is right now it is 64. We have different kind of user lock, you can see here. 0 means not locked, 32 means locked globally by administrator, 64 means locked locally by administrator, 128 due to incorrect logon. So this presently this user is locked locally by administrator. Then account number, this is the account number which you key in your SU01. Then creator, who created this user. when this user was created, this last logon date. These are all very useful information. If you wanted to find out when this user is logged on to this SAP system, then this is the table you need to look for. Because many a times, if you see in your organization, people create users in SAP, but they never log on. If they never logged on, then this will be 00.00.000. So you can also review these users periodically. Then you can say, okay, this user never logs on, they don't want to use the system, then we can delete this user. Because why do we need to do this periodical basis? You need to review this user. Why do we need to review the users periodically? Because of this reason, we can find out the users who is not using the SAP system, and we can delete this user. This will reduce the cost. This will reduce the license cost for your SAP. So you can, this is a logon date and logon time, initial password, coded version, and related to password. Then the password was changed, what is the last time it was changed. So this kind of information. This has all the information which we generally require. So this is a very important table, this USR02. And this is perhaps is the best way to check what are all the active users, presently active users in the system. So I can go here and say I need some more selection criteria, use field selection, need user locked status. Okay, so what I want to know, who is the active users in the system, then I will go like this. Valid from this specific date, also 00.00.000. This means the user does not have a end date, yeah, valid through. Then user type, all I wanted to see all the system user, and user is not locked. That means user is, if you put a single value here, if you put it like this, that means it is 0. Yeah, we cannot put a 0 value here. So if you put it like this, that means the value is 0. So I wanted to see what are all the users which is validity 2 is more than this specific date, and which has 000, there is no validity, and all the background users, yeah, the system user, and which was not locked. Okay, then number of users, if you click, we have 16 users. Run it like this. So you got all the 16 users, all background users. So validity is 000. Then who created this one, like this, all the information related to this user. Then if you wanted to see which are all the user which is not locked, which are all the user which is locked, that means which is not active, then what we can do is we can just simply say like this, not equal to 0. We have only one user which is on 64. And if you wanted to see all the dialog user, then we can simply say all the dialog user which is not presently 0. That means the user lock status is not 0. So we have more than 500. If you remove this one, then you run it again, it's 1669 users which is presently locked for some reason, which is equal to 0. If you run it like this, then you have 1966 user which is presently active. Okay, there's an USR02 table. Then let's go to the next table. Next table is AGR define. Sorry, this has the roles, role names, and who created this kind of header information. The detailed information is anyway here. This is all the header information. This is also quite useful for us if you are creating if you are creating master derived role concepts. We'll come to that one later. We will see that. The next other group, the next table is AGR underscore profile. The other one is AGR underscore users. Let's see these tables one by one. AGR underscore define. In this table we can see the header information of the role. This is a role, this is the master role, then username, who created, what time it was created, these kind of informations. Let's say z underscore pm, we created these roles. Let's say I want to know all these roles, then run. Now you have quite number of roles. The first role means is this is the derived role and this is the master role. So if you wanted to have all the derived roles for a specific master role, then this is the place you can look in to get it in one shot. Otherwise it's quite complicated to get this. This is the table you can get all these informations. Let's say I have a master role like this. I want to know how many derived role this master role have. Then I come to this table, AGR underscore define, take out this one, then put the master role here. So I have 4 derived role for this specific master role. Okay, if I delete this also should be defined as one role here. So this is also one role, but it does not have any master role for it, because since this is a master role. So like this we can get all the role information from this table. This table also used to count the number of roles available in this specific system. The number of roles, you have 4300 roles. Then let's go to the next table, AGR underscore profile, ROF. This table also quite useful. This table gives you the comparison between the roles as well as profiles. We set okay. So if you know a profile name and you wanted to find out which this belongs to which role, then you can get it from this table, AGR underscore PROF profile. Or if you have a roles, some number of roles, and you want to know all the profiles, then you can get it from here. Then the next table which you are going to see is AGR underscore users. AGR underscore users, here you can find, for example, one specific role is assigned to how many users, or you can also get one user have how many roles. For example, yes underscore student 1 have 2 roles assigned to this user. We can get it like this. For example, let's say I want to know this specific role is assigned to how many users. This information you can also get it from SU01 or PFCG. However, if you wanted to see this information for a huge number of users, then this is the from this table it will be easy to find out this information. Let's see this role is assigned to which users. Run it like this, then you get all the users who has this specific role. Or let's say if you wanted to find out how many roles which is assigned to user which is not valid, so you can put a start date and end date, then which is a invalid date, then you can find out what are all the roles assigned to users which has a validity date less than this or more than this, like this. So it's a quite useful information in these tables, so that it makes your diagnosing skills faster. So that if you know these tables, in that is the use of knowing these tables. Okay, with this we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.